Welcome back to another severe weather update here by Age Weather Forecast. Today we're going to be focusing on the severe weather event most likely for today here for the North Central Plains. We currently have a slight risk, and we can very well see some very large hail, damaging winds, and also can be seeing maybe some scattered tornadoes. One or two tornadoes are likely today, with some very strong supercells as well, for maybe even some derechos likely today in the northern plains. In today's video, we're going to be focusing on the timing, where we're going to see the worst of these storms, and also going to be seeing exactly how large and exactly how extreme they will be. But before we get in the video, please smash that subscribe button so you can show your awesome support, and also be sure to also hit that big like button so I know you enjoy this video. But without further ado, this forecast. So here we are looking at day one outlook, and as you see, we have a very widespread slight risk all the way from the Canadian border to portions of northern Nebraska. So we do have a very widespread slight risk. This is also including the areas where we had the enhanced or moderate risk as well for last week. So we are seeing a resemblance of the severe weather that we saw last week here, including areas like Pierre, Michelle, I believe, Aberdeen, Grand Forks, Fargo, and all the way near northwestern Minnesota. And then we also have a very widespread slight risk, marginal risk as well for these areas in Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, and Minnesota. Let's go and check out another tornado probability here. As you see, we have less than a 2% chance for these areas here in the Midwest, which means we really don't have a huge probability for tornadoes. And as we check out the hail probability, we have a 15% chance non-hatch risk. So we have a general 15% chance for hail. So we don't have a 15% chance hatch or a 30% chance hatch. So hail probability isn't as high, but could still very well see some large hail. And then wind threats also at a 15% chance. So this is not going to be a huge outbreak or 5+ tornadoes today. It's just going to be, we can see a decent amount of hail reports and a decent amount of wind reports, but won't be extreme. But we could very well see some really strong derechos and linear storms moving in this area. So here you are looking at the NANTHRA model for later today. As you see, we have scattered bands developing all from Colorado to portions of North Dakota. Here we have a defined low pressure system for portions of Colorado and Nebraska. This is going to bring some very strong storms to develop for portions of South Dakota and Nebraska. Could very well be semi-discrete. The discrete cells here could produce mainly some strong winds. And then as you see, these really strong potential derechos would develop for portions of potential derechos, but these very well could be QLCSs moving into the areas in North Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota, and Nebraska. I see very strong storms in different directions. Could see multiple waves as well. It looks like areas in the slight risk that these are going to be some very intense storms. So you definitely still, just because we don't have a huge risk just because we don't have a risk for tornadoes or a hatch risk for hail and winds, doesn't mean you're not going to maybe have a plan ready in play just in case something happens that was not expected. So we have very strong storms throughout much of today, mainly going to start ramping up and starting to really produce in the afternoon. And these storms kind of fall apart as now we move into tomorrow, but we still see some discrete or semi-discrete cells that could be very well pretty intense, and then kind of falls apart there. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the CAPE values here for today. Actually, as you see, currently we're seeing some very, very high numbers for portions of northwestern Canada, so northwestern Minnesota, and portions of North Dakota. As you see, we have very good numbers for portions that are under a general level for severe weather. As you see, we're seeing up to 5,000, almost 6,000 joules per kilogram for portions of Minnesota, areas in North Dakota where we have a slight risk up to 5,400 joules per kilogram, other areas at 4,000 joules per kilogram, 4,800 joules per kilogram for portions of Minnesota, 4,900 joules per kilogram for portions of South Dakota. As you see, we're seeing very, very good numbers today. So very well could see we are seeing a lot of energy to produce these storms today. It's exactly why we have that probability, the decent probability for hail and winds. And also going to be seeing this low pressure system, also very, very high amounts of energy actually in the atmosphere with instability, humidity, overday heating. All of that's going to be coming to play here for some severe weather and strong storms, T-storms to develop. And then these numbers of CAPE do kind of die down as we get later into today. But later, just before night, these numbers do ramp up once again. So we're going to be seeing, once again, very, very good numbers for portions of the North Central Plains, up to 5,300 joules per kilogram here for portions of South Dakota, very, very good numbers likely for producing some strong storms. Even portions of Nebraska, 4,700 joules per kilogram. Portion that's North Dakota, surpassing 4,000 joules per kilogram. Even all the way Minnesota, 3,000, above 3,800 joules per kilogram. And those numbers died down for before the 18th or before tomorrow. Now we're going to be looking at the SCP here, or supercell composite parameter, which is measuring based on a graph the probability or likelihood of seeing supercells, which supercells bring in really large hail, strong winds, and obviously tornadoes as well. And you see we're seeing to a 13 already for portions of North Dakota or the Dakotas. As you see, it's kind of in a linear line. You're seeing a stretch of numbers. That's because we're going to have those really strong QLCSs likely here. And then we see a jump in numbers up to 18, which is actually a very good reading here. And then we had these numbers die down. So we're not going to be seeing a huge probability for supercells here. That's why we're not going to be seeing a huge probability, or that's why we don't have a probability for tornadoes or a hatch for hail and winds, because it's going to be maintained on the lower side for activity of supercell wise, because you see some really strong winds and maybe some decent or moderately sized hail. So it doesn't mean we're not going to be seeing some severe weather impacts, but not going to be as severe. Last thing we're going to be looking at here is the wind shear. As you know, we need a lot of wind shear, or it's favorable. Severe weather is really favorable when we have a wind shear or a little over jet here. We saw this kind of outcome with Easter outbreak, and we haven't really had a lot of wind shear in play with the past couple of weeks here with severe weather events, but we're going to see a decent amount of shear here, actually a really good amount of shear, a lot of flow. So this is going to help produce these strong storms higher in the atmosphere, and this is going to be right in the areas where we are favorable for this severe storms. As you see, up to possibly 60 knots here, and even higher in portions of North Dakota, reaching up to 80 knots here. So very favorable conditions for wind shear, but obviously things can still cap out. So really this won't be a huge event, but obviously we are still knocking about the possibility for some, maybe even likely for a derecho. Very likely to have maybe even a QLCS here, and obviously we can't rule out the possibility for a supercell. As you see, we had up to 18 on this SCP, which is a pretty 50-50 possibility for seeing, or even more than 50, just a bit more than 50 for seeing supercells. Hope you guys did enjoy the video though. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and bye guys.